Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I am going to be talking about every book that I read in 2020 and I'm really excited to share these with you guys. I do want to note, I just got new glasses, so if you see the blue coming off of them, it's because they're blue light refracting glasses, so hopefully you don't mind. Also, I am currently refurbishing that dresser, not that one, that dresser behind me. If you're wondering why there's no drawers, that is the reason why. It's because they're outside waiting to be painted, so sorry. But anyway, this year I obviously read a lot of books because I was in lockdown. We all were in lockdown and I wanted to share with you guys what I read. So I did do this last year, every book I read in 2019, and in a few minutes I'll probably have every book I read in 2018 linked up there as well. So if you want to go check out what I read in previous years. This year definitely seemed like the year of classics and the year of nonfiction. Actually no, I did read a few fiction books as well, but definitely more classics and nonfiction for sure. I guess we'll go ahead and get started. If you haven't already, please be sure to hit the subscribe button down below and give this video a big thumbs up. And let's check out some of the books that I have. So I'm trying to decide what order I should go in, if I should go on what order I read them in. I think I'm just gonna go in order of piles. So we're gonna do classics, nonfiction, and then fiction. So, probably my favorite book of the year, Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier, if that's how you pronounce it. Rebecca was such a good book. I read this specifically because I knew the Netflix version was coming with Lily James, which I watched, and I have to say the book was 20,000 times better. And I actually went back and watched the classic Rebecca from like the 40s, and I actually liked that version better than the Lily James version, which is crazy because I love Lily James. Well, I did until all this controversy happened. So now I'm trying to see how she's gonna redeem herself. But Rebecca is basically about a woman who marries this super wealthy man, and he has a very mysterious past with his wife Rebecca, who tragically passed away. And I don't want to say too much without giving it away, but there's huge twists and turns, and it kept me on the edge of my seat. I literally could not put this book down. It was so good from the very beginning. And I've heard a lot of people don't like it, which is crazy to me. I don't know. I love classics, so maybe that's the reason why I love like Dracula. I loved this book. I loved a lot of classics, but this book was so good and it had me crying, it had me laughing. It's just so good. I can't recommend it enough. I just loved it so much. I'm definitely gonna read it again. I think it might honestly be my new favorite book of all time. Between this book and Dracula, they are my favorite books. So I don't know. It's a very tough competition, but I genuinely think that I will read this again probably every year. I think I might read it again for Halloween. It was so good. I feel like there's so many things I probably didn't notice throughout the book. The movie was good, but it definitely was not as good as the book. That's all I'll say. The movie felt a little too rushed to me, the Netflix version, after the ship crashes specifically, which that doesn't give anything away, but that's when everything just did not make any sense to me and they did not explain stuff in as much detail as the books. So I definitely recommend this book. It was so good. These are 5 books all in one. Wait, is it 5? Hold on, let me check. These I read all in quarantine. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh, there's 7 books. I read these all in quarantine, which are the Chronicles of Narnia. Loved these. Was obsessed with these. Devoured them so quickly. I think my favorite of the books were probably The Silver Chair and Voyage of the Dawn Treader, which is crazy because Voyage of the Dawn Treader was my least favorite movie, but I loved these so much. I can't wait for the Netflix adaptation. After each book, I went back and watched the movies, and I found the original Chronicles of Narnia, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe to be pretty similar. Prince Caspian was 1000% different from the books, like in pretty much every possible way. And Voyage of the Dawn Treader, I think, was pretty close, but like there's so many more details in Voyage of the Dawn Treader for the book that I feel like it'd be hard for them to have squeezed it all into the movies. But I loved the Chronicles of Narnia so much. I want to read these with my kids one day. I want to read them again by myself. They were so good. I can't wait for the Netflix series. I hope it's really close to the book because these are so enchanting and I just love them so much. And the last battle was beautifully written, and I just can't say enough about them, to be honest. I really enjoyed reading them. If you don't know what Chronicles of Narnia are, it's basically about this magical land called Narnia where it's ruled by a lion called Aslan, and Nala's name was actually Aslan when we thought that she was gonna be a boy. And they're really, really good. They're about, well, each book is about different characters, but Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, Prince Caspian, and Voyage of the Dawn Treader revolves around 4 kids called the Pevensies: Lucy, Edmund, why can I not think of the older one's name, Susan, and why can I not think of the oldest one's name? Now I'm irritated with myself. Oh my gosh, how can I not think of his name? Oh my goodness, I'm gonna be so angry with myself when I freaking read his name. Peter's the last name of the kid. But yes, they're so good. I highly recommend. And I didn't think I would like the ones without the 4 Pevensies, but I really did enjoy them, and I love how it ties them in some way. So highly recommend Chronicles of Narnia. It's pretty easy read as well too. It's more for like kids, I feel like, and teenagers, but it has some really deep meanings behind them as well. So I definitely recommend checking this one out. Also, the sun is changing, so sorry about the lines on my face. I'm trying to adjust as we go on. Okay, so this book, depending on who you are and what you believe, would either be classified as classics or nonfiction, but this year I read the Bible. And I started off reading the Bible when I was a sophomore in high school. Sorry, my camera's adjusting. I started off reading the Bible when I was a sophomore in high school, and I have to say that it took me this long to finish the entirety of the Bible. I'm being a little controversial here, okay? So it took me a long time, and my relationship with God has changed dramatically in that time of being a sophomore in high school and starting to go to youth group and going to church every weekend and a bunch of other things. I was really connected to church, and I was reading a lot of Christian books, and now my relationship with God is completely different. I really don't know where it stands, what areas I believe in and what areas I don't, because I think that in church we are taught a lot of things that never are actually said in the Bible, and I never realized this until I actually read the entire Bible, which a lot of Christians have not done, and I highly recommend doing it if you have not, because there are a lot of topics that are talked about in church that are not talked about in the Bible, and that just made me really question a lot of things, because the church is a business and the church does need money, and there's a lot of ways that you can teach people to give you money and do things that are not actually in the Bible. So that's all I'm gonna say, because I don't want to get thousands of hate comments on this video, but I just would suggest, if you are a Christian and you do go to church, that you do read the entirety of the Bible before you tell people things that you may not actually know biblically. That's just how I feel about reading the Bible. So I've really enjoyed reading the Bible. There's been a lot of things that I'm very curious about now, because learning about the translations and how things have been translated and how things should have technically been translated makes me want to go back and read like a very, very old edition, like before the 40s when homophobia was introduced to the Bible, and I'm really curious. So if you guys have any recommendations for resources on that, let me know in the comments down below. And also, if you are not a Christian, I also still recommend reading the Bible. It has a lot of stories that are really meaningful, and a lot of wisdom that we can take from it. And there's also a lot of really scary stuff in here too. Like, let's not be wrong about it. So yeah, I read the entire Bible, and my relationship with God is completely different from when I first picked it up. This one also is the Women's Study Bible. I was not a huge fan of this one. It cost a lot of money. My mom bought it for me when I was in high school. My favorite one I've ever had was a high school student's Bible, and it helped me understand it a little bit more. This one I felt was a little more on the judgmental side, so I didn't like that. I really just want a study Bible that really just dives into the historical aspects of the Bible and not the sinful aspects of the Bible, if that makes sense. So I'm gonna be on the lookout for that, because I did not particularly enjoy that about this book, being judged for everything I do on like every single page because of like the things, like these are on every page. It's like a context of what's going on, and they kind of like make you feel like really bad about yourself. So Anyway, that's enough about that book. Let's move on. So that was, oh, I have one more classic actually. So this year I started reading on my e-reader, and it's probably one of the best things that has ever happened in the world of reading. And I was always one of those people that said, oh, I love the feel of books and the smell of books, I'll never go to an e-reader. And then I got my iPad and started downloading books on it because I wanted to be more minimalistic and not have so many books in my house. And I've loved it so much. At nighttime when Blake is sleeping, I can still read because I don't have to keep the light on. It has nighttime mode, so I really love it. I'm obsessed with it. And there's so many free books on iBooks. There's like new free books every day. So I'm just a big fan, and also because I can take my books anywhere with me and they don't take up a lot of space. Like, look how tiny this thing is. Anyway, I read 3 books on here this year on the e-reader, and I probably will read a lot more. As you can see, I've downloaded a lot of books. So the first book for classics was The Turn of the Screw. I just clicked on it, so it's opening up. But I read The Turn of the Screw. It's a free book on iBooks, and I read it specifically because of The Haunting of Hill House Season 2, which was The Haunting of Bly Manor. And I wanted to read the book before I watched the show because I knew Haunting of Hill House was based off a book. I hadn't read it before, and I knew Bly Manor was based off of The Turn of the Screw. Here we go, The Turn of the Screw by Henry James. I knew that it was based off of the book, and I wanted to read it beforehand. I know they're like loosely based off of the book, so I wasn't like thinking that it was going to be exactly the same, and it was pretty different, but there were a lot of things that were very similar, and I really liked diving more into the characters through the show. The book was pretty difficult to read, I will not lie. It was very short read though, so that wasn't bad, but it was pretty spooky, and it did have me thinking about a lot, so I would recommend it if you don't mind classics. The writing is a little bit hard to understand at times, at least for me, but it was really good, and I prefer the show more, but that's just how it is, I think. And yeah, the show was incredible. If you haven't seen The Haunting of Bly Manor, it was a beautiful show, and I can't wait for the next season for them to announce where they're going to take us next and what book I'm going to read next for the next season, so I cannot wait for that. Okay, next up in my little pile of books is Homework by Julie Andrews. So if you saw last year's Every Book I Read video, I had read Home by Julie Andrews, which is the first book. These are her autobiographies, and Home was basically about her growing up and going into Broadway and all of her theater years and her life as a child. Homework was about her years in the world of Hollywood and her divorce and marrying her new husband, and cannot recommend enough. This one I actually preferred to Home because there was just a lot of information about, I think it starts with Mary Poppins if I'm not mistaken. It starts with Mary Poppins, and I loved learning about Mary Poppins. Another thing I love about these books is she puts a lot of behind the scenes photos in there as well. They're in the middle of the book, which I loved seeing those, and I just loved like learning about Mary Poppins, The Sound of Music, you know, so many of her movies that she's done. Her credits are so extensive, and I went through and was watching the movies after I had read the book and looking for the little details that she points out, and I just literally devoured this book. It was so good, and I cannot recommend enough. I love Julie Andrews so much, and she inspires me so much, and I loved how real and raw she was in this book with her husband and their divorce and everything like that. The only tiny complaint I have is numerous times throughout this book she talks about her struggle with finances. I am in no way saying that she wasn't struggling, because as a child she really was super poor, but in this book specifically she talks about, you know, booking movies and booking shows and booking these things specifically to make money to support her family, and some of the extravagances that she had, like a yacht and a mansion and a house in Malibu, and she kind of talks about like how she didn't have enough money to support those things. So at times it was a little bit too much, because I was like, okay, just sell the yacht, sell the house, like let's move on. But that's the only complaint I had. In no way am I putting her down, because she did go through serious rough patches and serious times of being poor in her life, but it was just hard, like especially probably because I read this during lockdown when I had no job, basically saying like, oh, like I didn't really want to work, but I booked this job to like support my yacht and my house and things like that. But anyway, just a small complaint. point, but I loved the book. I loved reading about the behind the scenes of Hollywood and Julie Andrews' life because I love her so much, and her adoption and her work with the Vietnam War. So good. Definitely recommend for sure. Okay, next up I read Insta Travel by Aggie. So this book was amazing. Sorry about the shadows. The sun is already setting and it's literally 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Aggie is an influencer, an Instagrammer, and she's a world traveler, and I loved this book so much. So basically what I loved about it too is each page is a different experience or a different trip. Oh, sorry, the camera is following my face. I'm trying to get it so that the sun is not bad. So you'll see there's like a picture, there's multiple pictures, there's photo tips, there's what to bring, where to go, and things to do, and I love this so much. So this one that I just showed you is called Island Hop in the Philippines. There were so many that I added to my travel bucket list. She has them in categories too. So she has beach and water, adventures, cultural, animal encounters, city experiences, and festivals. And I just think it is such a good book. I was super, super happy with it. And the thing that I loved about it most was that I read this during lockdown, and when my mental health was like pretty low, it was really hard to focus on things for an extended period of time. So I loved how these, like, one page was it, and then you move on to the next experience, because it was like if I couldn't focus for more than one, I would just read one and then put the book down. So that was fine. And I loved, she shares about climbing Mount Kilimanjaro, and she shares about some of the not so good sides of traveling, like she got paint in her eyes at the Holi Festival in India, and it was just a really good book. And on Amazon, I read the reviews and people were saying it's not worth it because she shares these pictures on Instagram. I'm telling you, I think it's worth it because she gives so much insight and she shows so many pictures that are not on her Instagram. And not only does she talk about these experiences, but she talks about what to do in the area while you're there, and photo tips. The photo tips are really good that she put in there, and what to bring was really good as well. Some things that I wouldn't have even thought about, like, let me see if I can find one. Like here, enjoy a picnic in Tuscany. So she says that you can get picnic gear locally, bring light layers of clothing, bring a collapsible coat or something for your carry-on that you can unload easily and put your essentials into to make it an easy picnic basket. No matter what you pack, leave room in your suitcase to bring some bottles of wine home. So there's just a lot of really good tips in here, and I really, really enjoyed it a lot. Okay, next up, into the world of fiction. Let me adjust real quick because this light is driving me crazy. Okay, I'm a little farther back, but that's gonna be better. I have 2 fiction books by the books, and then I have 2 more on my e-reader, and then I have one which my stepmom currently has, which I'll put a picture of right here. It is called The Dogs of Christmas, and I just finished that book. That was actually my last book of 2020, and it was such a good book. I don't want to give too much of it away, but it's basically about a man who's going through a breakup, and one day his neighbor comes and basically dumps a dog at his door. He finds out the dog is pregnant, and it's basically about him learning how to deal with a dog and her puppies when he's never had a dog before. Really good. There's romance in there. There's a lot of interesting facts about dogs that I never knew. It's a beautifully written book. It kept me on the edge of my seat. I could not put it down, and it has a very happy ending because I don't like reading sad animal books, but I am telling you, you will not be sad at the end of this book, and I highly, highly recommend it. It was so good. It was perfect for Christmas. It's a very heartwarming book, and I think I'll read it again because it was really, really good. Okay, also this year I read The Conference of the Birds by Ransom Riggs. I'm obsessed with the Miss Peregrine's Peculiar Children series. They're so good, and I reread all the books in 2019 because I knew this one was coming out in January, and now that the next book is coming out in February of 2021, I think I'm gonna read this book next so I can remember exactly what was happening in terms of the next book as it comes out. This book was so good. I was so happy with where he decided to move the story and to move on from certain pieces of the story. I'm not gonna get into specific, but I loved the book so much. It was really good, and I can't wait for the next one and just to learn a lot more. So I'm really excited. And if you haven't heard of the Peculiar Children series, it's basically about a kid who finds out that his grandfather was part of this group of peculiar children in the 1940s, and he thinks it's all fake and like photoshopped, but he goes there and he finds out that these kids are still alive and that they have all these magical powers, and they're called peculiarities, which I think is really neat. They're not like powers, it's just what makes them peculiar and what makes them unique. And there are, I think the next book is the last book, so there's gonna be 6 in the series. 5 are out now. The 6th one is coming out in February, and I cannot recommend them enough. stuff. They're so good. When I first read them, I loved them, and then when I read them the second time I read them, I loved them even more because I noticed so many details and so many heartwarming tidbits, and I love them so much. So Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children and The Conference of the Birds is the one that I read this year. Very, very, very good. Also, what I love about this book is he tells the stories through vintage photographs. So let me show you an example. So like here's one. This one's a little creepy, but they're scattered throughout the books. They really help tell the stories because he'll use these as his characters, so you get kind of like a feel for what he pictures them in his head. And these are authentic vintage photographs, which I think is so cool that these people probably took these photos like in the 1800s, 1900s, had no idea that their pictures were going to end up being in these widely known books one day, which I think is just so cool. Okay, next up in the world of fiction is this book called Beautiful Ruins by Jess Walter. This book was really, really good. It's basically about a gentleman who inherits his family's hotel on like a very rundown part of Italy, and how he's basically trying to revamp it and turn it into something new when a Hollywood actress lands on his beach. This is in, I think, the 50s, I believe. What I love about this book is it brings in like real life people like Elizabeth Taylor and so many other like famous actors, and they're actually in the book and they talk, and it's really, really cool. The thing about this book that I wasn't the biggest fan of is the storytelling, which is weird because that's also my favorite thing about the book. I don't really know how to describe it, but the storytelling takes place from the perspective of different characters in different time periods. It just confused me a lot. I feel like it was a great idea, but it was just a little too confusing and not really explained the best way. I think like a better way to do it would have been like at the very beginning of the chapter. Basically each chapter starts with like the title of the chapter and then it has a year, so 1846 in Truckee, California. That's literally all it says. So it doesn't really tell you like the perspective of the character. It really only tells like which character you're talking about, I guess, and which period of their life. So sometimes I was confused, like, wait, is this when she was here? Is this when she was at this point in her life? Did she already do this? Did she already do that? So I was a little confused. I love the idea behind it and hearing the story from different characters' viewpoints and getting to see it from different angles at different time periods, but it was just, for me, it was the execution. It was a little hard to understand, but I still really enjoyed the book. It just wasn't like, I wasn't diving into it as much as others, but I really loved it. I love that it took place. I love that it took place in Italy because I got to learn so much more about Italy culture and things like that. So I really loved it. A lot of the book also has Italian in it, and I just thought that was really cool and really authentic. So Beautiful Ruins, I do recommend. Storytelling was the only part for me that was a little bit hard to understand. I've moved again trying to compensate for this lighting, so I'll be quick. I only have 2 more books to go. So the first one that I read is a Hannah Swensen book, which if you know me, you know I love Hannah Swensen so much. So this year I read 2 Hannah Swensen books. The first one was Coconut Layer Cake Murder by Joanne Fluke. So the Hannah Swensen series is basically about a baker who lives in Minnesota in a very, very small town, and she helps solve mysteries, murder mysteries. It's really, really good. I have to say that they are starting to decline a little bit, more so the prequels. So every year she has a book that continues in the same order of the other books, so it's like the same storyline. And then also every year during the holiday season she releases a prequel, which is about like before the books even started, and those are like a little more like, this sounds really mean, but they're a little more like dumbed down. Like she explains everything really, really in detail. Sometimes the way that Hannah talks is very like elementary, I guess is the right way to put it. Sometimes that bothers me a little bit, especially because I know how good the books used to be with like Cream Puff Murder, which was my favorite of the Hannah Swensen books, and all of those, I could not put them down. I was so obsessed with them, and I still love the books so much, but they're definitely, I feel like, not on the same level as they used to be, which is really sad because I really enjoyed them so much. But I'm still enjoying them, I'm still reading them, and this book specifically was, I had the hardest time picking it up because I was so nervous to hear what the beginning was going to start like because of the ending of the previous book, which was, I think, Raspberry Danish Murder, if I'm not mistaken. So if you've read the book, you know what I mean, because we were waiting on some very big news and I was so nervous, so I could barely pick this book up and hear what the news was. But I read the book. It was such a good book. Really, really enjoyed it. Each one takes place with a different murder, and her love triangle between 2 guys, Mike and Norman, and I really love them. They're very good, easy reads. They're called cozy mysteries, so they're not supposed to be anything like particularly ravishing in terms of like literature goes. They're just mostly supposed to be fun reads, and I really enjoy them personally. Also, I read Christmas Cupcake Murder, I'll let it focus, which was another really good one in the Hannah Swensen series. Again, it's the prequel, so it is a little more like dumbed down and more, I don't want to say dumbed down, that sounds so mean, but it is a little more like, I don't know, like it's just explained too much in detail, I guess is the right way to say it. You have to kind of read it to understand, like there's just too many, like the way that things are spoken by characters is just like so, it's like you're telling someone your plan. Like it's like, okay, Hannah will be like, okay, so I'm gonna go to the grocery store and buy this, and this, and then you can meet me at my apartment where we will eat this and drink this wine, and then we will do our notes. That's kind of how it is. Like it's just like a lot of things are explained that don't need to be explained, and it makes it just feel a lot like why, I guess is the way that I want to put it. But it was still a great book. It was nice for the Christmas season. I like this one in particular because of the storyline with a homeless man who they basically are uncovering where he was from and what he's doing in their little town, and it was really, really good. So I personally enjoyed it. Anyway guys, that is every book I read in 2020. I cannot wait for all the reading to come in 2021. Let me know your favorite book or a book that you think I should read in the comments down below. I still have them. I'm gonna read them from previous videos I've done with this. I just have so many books that I'm trying to read right now, but I love hearing your guys' suggestions and talking with you guys about books in the comments down below. So let me know what you think. And anyway guys, I hope you're having a wonderful, wonderful week, and I will see you on Thursday with a new vlog. Bye guys.